Welcome to Breezin with Bierman, the podcast or interview. Again, if you like what you hear on this podcast, please subscribe to me on my YouTube channel, Facebook, Instagram, also on Princetonian Now, Instagram, Facebook, and where other great interviews are sold. This month marks the beginning of the Plastic Pollution Reduction Act, signed way back by Governor Murphy in November of 2020. It's been a long and winding road, and it's not been easy. Today's guest, I talked to her 2 years ago about this, and it's finally come to fruition. Well, congratulations. She is a lawyer, activist, environmentalist, person of the planet who cares about it, obviously. We're talking to Bainy Suri. And first off, again, you want to say it wasn't just you, a lot of people just coalesced together to get this done. And that was passing this Plastic Pollution Act. I mean, so how do you feel? What's happened now since then?
It feels really awesome for a lot of reasons. I mean, I think to see something that you work on actually come to fruition when there was so much resistance. You know, I can remember doing a debate on Dennis and Judy and being attacked.
For those who know 101.5, the biggest radio station in New Jersey, and I
Correct.
heard that interview. They were basically trying to paint you as some mollycoddled Princetonian who cares more about plastic than people or something. Yeah.
As a Californian, as a crazy Californian,
Right.
but the funny thing was that I actually, Kai and I, my son, had gone to Greenwich, Connecticut, and we were staying in this really nice hotel, and it was during COVID. And so when we came downstairs to the breakfast area, there was a couple there. And I said, "Oh, could we sit here?" And then I told the woman, "You look really familiar. Do I know you? Do you know me?" And she said, "Well, we're not from around here. We're from Jersey." And I said, "Well, we're not from around here either. We're from Jersey." And then she said, "Do you know I have a radio show?"
Oh my God.
And I said, "What's the name of the show?" And she said, "Dennis and Judy." And I was
No.
like, "Yes."
This is
And
after-
at this point, the act had passed. And it was so awesome because I was like, "Hey, Judy, do you remember me? Bainy,
Right.
like
Did
rainy,
she?
but with the B."
Did she?
No, she was like, "I don't remember." I said, "You were awful to me. I mean, just awful."
Right. I have to say, I did listen to the radio broadcast, and I'm nonpartisan here. It was just a hatchet job, and they didn't even let you talk. It was a lot of screaming and being loud, and you did keep calm. You just tried to make your points about. Did you take away her plastic straw in protest?
No, I didn't. I got a little heated, but it was one of those moments where I was like, "Judy, do you like apples?" And then
How do you
the
like them
person
apples?
says, "What do you mean?" You're like, "How do you like them apples?" Not only did it pass in Mercer County, I mean, these smaller towns, it passed across the entire state of New Jersey. It's an excellent bill. Other states like Pennsylvania are being inspired to act because of it. And I think that it's amazing to see that in those 10 years, in that decade, how much the public will changed and how many officials were willing to come together to step out in front, to pass this, in little towns all over Jersey. And then, of course, Senator Smith and Senator Greenstein sponsoring the large state bill, our own Senator Zwicker being
Former
a
Assembly
sponsor.
Pinkham and Linda
Yes,
Greenfield, right?
former Assemblywoman Pinkham just gave a wonderful presentation on the state bill. It was so impressed to hear it. So lots of bold leaders doing lots of bold things.
Right.
And that makes me feel better about living in dirty Jersey.
But how do you-
Maybe it'll get cleaned up.
Okay, so you've passed it, and now there's no plastic bags. So on day one, it worked out pretty smoothly. The plastic bags weren't there. People didn't have should I say, hissy fits demanding their plastic, and they didn't decry the mommy state. It just happened. Yes? No?
Exactly. And I think that is one thing that's really important to address. If you look back to the smoking ban, I mean, California had gotten rid of smoking decades before other people were dealing with it. And when I would come to the East Coast, people would say, "Oh, that can't happen in New York. Manhattan's closing down.
Right.
All the bars are going to be
Restaurants will
empty."
be over, right? Yeah, Chicken
And when
Little.
the change actually is implemented, there's very little resistance.
Right.
And that was the same thing with the plastic bags. And you look at, all the people that kept running these voluntary programs that were doing nothing, that had no impact. They couldn't demonstrate that there had been any difference that was made, and the programs weren't even being complied with.
Right. You said it might make those programs are nice. It makes people feel good, but really the actual effect was negligible to nothing.
Well, I think I would argue that it's not just that there's no positive impact, it's that it undermines the movement. Because when you make people feel good and they think, oh, this isn't a problem.
Right.
There were elected officials that I had reached out to at the end of the rope here. And they were like, oh, plastics, it's done.
No.
It wasn't done. It never got done. And I think that you have to be bold and push for change. And of course, people are going to be resistant mentally to it in their mind. But when it actually goes into effect, there usually is not a lot of resistance.
Right. It's interesting to see you in psychology. So instantly, are you able to quantify, though, about this success, about less plastic bags? Are you getting reports that there's less plastic bags going in, like the Raritan, to the ocean? Or how do you judge it? How do you report back?
Well, you know that there were 4.4 billion bags being used across the state of New Jersey, right, in a given year. Those bags, those one-off at Wawa and the grocery store, those bags are not being given out. So,
that's quantifiable. So we're talking thousands and among every day.
And merchants are not buying the bags, so they won't be reinvesting in those.
Right.
In terms of enforcing it, when we were working on one of the elements that had come up was the reusable bag definition. And for me, I never cared what the thickness of the bag was because no one was going to police that, right? So I was like, that's kind of an irrelevant thing to have in the definition of the bag. But no one is really policing this, but it's the kind of thing that actually doesn't need a lot of policing because it goes into effect. The merchants comply. People get used to not seeing the bags. And I think one thing that's really important to remember, Whole Earth in this town has not had plastic bags for decades.
That's right.
And that's a very successful store. It's one of my favorite grocery stores in town. And nobody that shops there had a problem.
That's true, because people get conditioned. And you just bring your bag for that. If you're going to go to Whole Earth, you have a bag. It means something. Besides the plastic bag, did that lead, again, to another, what you would say in your mind, positive momentum with other things that were being addressed? Styrofoam, straws, what else?
Yes. I think all of that is addressed in this bill and the comprehensive nature of it.
Oh, is that comprehensive?
Yes, it's very comprehensive, and it is the strictest plastic pollution bill in the nation now. Because I think one of the advantages of not sometimes being first out of the gate is that you can look to see what all these other states did. What problems did they have? How do we avoid that? Where's the best language that we can take to put into our own bill?
And then find champions in your own New Jersey, in this sense, who know how to work the levels of power, how the sausage is made, write the legislation.
How the sausage is made. I definitely like that. I'm relatively, I don't even know if it's relatively new. I'm brand new to working as a lobbyist and meeting with elected officials. I got into the game when COVID was here. And so I haven't had an opportunity to connect as much as I would like to. But I definitely will be following up with Senator Smith, Senator Greenstein, Senator Zwicker, who I do talk to frequently because he's my elected representative. There's other leaders, Raj Mukherjee, who has been the sponsor of the Liberty State Park Act. So there are a lot of really green, authentic leaders. And I think it's important to shine a light on the work that they're doing, to support them, and to figure out what we can do to help pass more legislation like this.
Well, play the devil's advocate, another, I think, hoop you have to jump through is, too, when people hear green, they think it's going to cost money, that they're going to suffer. And you think this bill addresses that? And how do you address people when they talk about that? When they say it's a nanny state, or you're taking away my liberty, or something like that?
You have to be sensitive to the fact that not everybody is on the same plane and in the same place about what they want to see regulated. And unfortunately, not everybody is on the same plane about climate crisis.
Right. So how do you talk to people like that? You don't win friends, and you don't influence enemies by denouncing them. I would assume. What would your conversation be like?
I think you have to try to really connect with them on a level that's important to them,
right,
and then hopefully to use facts and science to convince them. If you're dealing with people who don't understand what a fact is or don't understand science, of course it can become more difficult. But so much of it is psychology. And I think it was in the 70s, there was a lot of litter in Texas. It was a huge problem. The state was very dirty. And someone had come up with this wonderful campaign called Don't Mess with Texas.
Right.
And
that
all
appeals
of
to
a
the
sudden,
psyche of
yes.
Texas. We're independent. We're, don't mess with us. So
Yes.
the
And so
title's
Texas got clean
Right.
really fast. And that was a lot of people that were not necessarily interested in that issue coming on board to say, hey, wait a minute, this is Texas. Right. This is a mess. This is bad for our place where we live.
We call that the cultural code. It can change. Like a state like Texas has a cultural code. We're rugged,
yes.
we're independent and stuff. So when you attach that with then cleaning up, it becomes something positive, something, and we can work together, and we eliminate it. We win. To me, that's very Texas, if I can go. Where do you want to go from here, though? Before I go from questions from the crowd, where do you want to go from here as a lobbyist, as a green person?
Well, I'm launching my new company, Eco Community Solutions. It was a consultancy, and now it's going to do pilot programs that are innovative.
Take it for what you've learned from your hard-earned knowledge.
The things that I've learned are, number one, that you need you need a champion. You need a real champion if you want to pass legislation. And if you look at what happened in West Windsor, they had champions. They had this amazing PEC. They had amazing council people, not all of them, but a lot of them, that wanted to listen to the PEC. They passed this great law, right. And the mayor vetoed it. And I think he used the same kind of logic that Princeton was using. Let's wait for the state. I mean, it's 500 bags a person times the number of people in your town times the number of years you wait. Right. So that's not really a good philosophy. But if you don't have someone who's going to support you, really support you, not just say, I care about this issue, can you vote for me, and then never do anything about it, you're not going to get very far. Mm-hmm. So you do need those legislative leaders, elected officials that are willing to come out and work towards implementing solutions that are not always popular. You need a lot of patience, because even though I whine about the 10 years that it took, because I wanted New Jersey to beat California. California didn't pass statewide legislation until 2015. So we had 5 years where I thought this is going to happen, and it didn't happen. And so, I think you need to be patient. I think it is reasonable that landmark legislation could take decades, 10, 20, 30 years to get passed, because that's what it can take to move something through, right? The politics are changing, the governor is changing, right. The elected leaders of the Senate and the Assembly are changing.
Priorities change, priorities, politics, personalities, and everything.
Got to have bold leaders, got to have patience, got to have allies. I think there's strength in numbers.
Right.
And for me...
Can you feed off each other that strength to give you that tenacity, that staying power? Because it can be lonely and can be frustrating.
It was really motivating to see all these different groups and to see how passionate these other people were, constantly showing up. And they had been, involved in the mix too. And so I found it really inspiring, to be around other people that were like, we can do this, come on, we can do, it sort of reignites your energy. But for me, the climate crisis is an opportunity. I see it as the greatest opportunity that mankind has ever had.
Is that what you would tell your son? You have a son, obviously. He's going to inherit this planet after we're long gone. And you say it's opportunity, you're optimistic about what we're going through?
I am optimistic about what could happen. I do believe that human beings can do amazing things and be very innovative, but it's this idea of everybody coming together to solve a global problem. And if that can happen, the problem can be solved, and that to me is an amazing opportunity. And I will say the other thing for me that's very important is that my son Kai is going to be left, and he is non-speaking. I'm not going to be here. I'm his only parent, and it's always the elderly, the poor, and the disabled that suffer environmental degradation the most. The most. And so when you're talking about
they can't afford to go to a mountain in Switzerland.
No, they cannot. Right. And those people are voiceless. And so I want to help be the voice. I want to say, look, I am not disabled. I don't walk in those shoes, and I would never profess to claim that I do, but I am the mother of somebody that's disabled. And that keeps me up at night. That worries me. And it's not just going to be, anyone defenseless is going to be in trouble. air, water, soil.
The ecosystem's connected, and we all have, unless we're going to the moon, which I don't plan to, we're going to be here for a while. Well, Bainy Suri, I have to tell you, I do have 3 black cloth bags. I've done that for a while, and there's no reason for any plastic. And hopefully we can revisit you in another 2 years and see where you're at.
Absolutely. Hopefully I'll solve compost and toxins. That's next on the agenda.
Bainy Suri, and not her alone, they helped pass in New Jersey the Plastic Pollution Reduction Act, comprehensive paradigm shift, and another beginning in dealing with climate catastrophe. And this has been Breezin with Bierman, the podcast.